society. Now may I call upon all the dignitaries to adorn the seats. I know you all have requested to be on the other side. May I request all the dignitaries to please come on the dais to sing the elocution song.
ಕವಿತೆ ಬದುಕಿನ ನೈಜತೆಯನ್ನು ಬಿಂಬಿಸುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕವಿತೆ. ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಹುಡುಕಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ದೇವರ ಕಲ್ಲು ಮಣ್ಣುಗಳ ಗುಡಿಯೊಳಗೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಗುಡಿಯೊಳಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಇರುವ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಸ್ನೇಹಗಳ, ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಇರುವ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಸ್ನೇಹಗಳ ಒಳಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ನಂದನ, ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಬಂಧನ, ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ನಂದನ, ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಬಂಧನ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಇವೆ ನಮ್ಮೊಳಗೆ. ಒಳಗಿನ ತಿಳಿಯನು ಕಲಕದೆ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಅಮೃತ ಸವಿದೆ ನಾಲಿಗೆಗೆ. ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಹುಡುಕಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ದೇವರ ಕಲ್ಲು ಮಣ್ಣುಗಳ, ಹತ್ತಿರವಿದ್ದು ದೂರ ನಿಲ್ಲುವೆವು, ಹತ್ತಿರವಿದ್ದು ದೂರ ನಿಲ್ಲುವೆವು ನಮ್ಮ ಅಹಮ್ಮಿನ ಕೋಟೆಯಲ್ಲಿ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಕಷ್ಟವೊಂದಿಗೆ ಎಂಬುದು ನಾಲ್ಕು ದಿನದಲ್ಲಿ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ, ನಾಲ್ಕು ದಿನದಲ್ಲಿ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ. ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಹುಡುಕಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ದೇವರ ಕಲ್ಲು ಮಣ್ಣು, ಕಲ್ಲು ಮಣ್ಣುಗಳ ಗುಡಿಯೊಳಗೆ.
Thank you, Chetan. Chetan has been my super junior in the college. I must tell something always. Thank you, Chetan. Now may I call upon Mr. J.S. Shetty, the treasurer of the house, to welcome our guests.
Ali sir, Ali.
Slight confusion which I have to clear up first of all. See, the organizers came to me 2050. What I am going to speak now will be very important thing. Now we are living in very turbulent times. Every day we are bombarded with news that is mostly bad news. This evening I intend to bring some good news to cheer you. The facts and figures that you will hear are not from my research, but that of two authors of a book called Abundance. The authors are Peter Diamandis and Stephen Portwell. Both are men of science, highly qualified, with many achievements. And I am literally giving you pieces of information from that book. Humanity is now entering a period of radical transformation in which technology has the potential to significantly raise the standards of living for every man, woman and child on the planet. In other words, abundance for all is within our grasp. Yes, it is difficult to readily accept this statement. But please notice that elements of this transformation is already underway. Over the past 20 years, wireless technologies and the internet have become affordable and available to almost everyone. Africa, it has skipped a technological generation, bypassing the landlines that stripe our skies for the wireless wave. Mobile phone penetration is growing exponentially from 2% in 2000, 28% in 2009 to 70% in 2013 and certainly higher today. I'm talking about the world population which has access to mobile technology. People with no education, people with little food to eat have gained access to cellular technology, which was unheard of 30 years ago. So you see how the change has come. In a similar fashion, the advancement of new transformational technologies, computational systems, networks and sensors, artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology, bioinformatics, 3D printing, nanotechnology, human-machine interfaces, biomedical engineering will soon enable the vast majority to have access to what only the rich have access to today. Added to these technologies, there are three change agents. Today, there are suddenly small groups of individuals who are able to achieve what large corporations or governments only could do. You take the example of, for instance, aerospace giants said it was impossible, but a man called Burt Rutan flew into space on a rocket financed and built by him. Craig Venter matched the US government in the race to sequence the human genome. These are examples of the first of the three forces. These are individuals who have come out recently. The second force are the new breed of wealthy techno-philanthropists who are using their wealth to solve global challenges. Bill Gates is crusading against malaria. Mark Zuckerberg is working to reinvent education. There are others in this category. We have our own Sai Baba who brought the water to Anantapur district. There are others in this category, and this is the second force unrivaled in history. We never had such individuals before. The third force is the poorest of the poor, who are finally becoming part of the global economy and will be transformed into an emerging market force. These forces acting together and amplified by growing technologies will make the unimaginable actually possible. Imagine a world of 9 billion people with clean water, nutritious food, affordable housing, personalized education, top-class medical care, unlimited non-polluting energy. How this dreamlike world would be possible is the gist of this talk. As I was saying, we see that there is chaos all over the world, and we will continue to see economic meltdowns, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and other tragedies. But if we look at history, we see that progress continues through the good times and the bad. Take the 20th century. It witnessed both incredible advances and unspeakable tragedy. The 1918 influenza epidemic killed 50 million people. World War II killed another 60 million. There were tsunamis, cyclones, earthquakes, fires, and floods. But the period also saw infant mortality decrease by 90%, maternal mortality decreased by 99%, and overall lifespan increased by more than 100%. In other words, quality of life improved more in the past century than ever before. Hence, it would be safe to presume, given the trends, that global standards of living will continue to improve regardless of the horrors that dominate today's headlines. One of the challenges that needs to be overcome is to sustain the growing population. Population growth and the limit of the planet Earth to sustain the maximum number has been a matter of deep concern since the 1960s of thinkers all over the world. At present, there are more than 7 billion people on Earth. If the trends are not reversed by the year 2050, there will be close to 10 million people, 10 billion people. You know how much a billion is? 1,000 million makes a billion. So you will have 10 billion people. The common opinion of experts is that the Earth would not be able to sustain any more people. Top-down population control, post-population control has never worked anywhere in the world. Starting with the eugenics program of the Nazis, what they did was, they said everybody cannot have children. Only the strongest and the healthiest should have, and Aryan children, or something like that. Never worked. Then take India, India's emergency period, where there was post-tubal ligations and vasectomies. It brought down the government. Take China, they had a one-child program. The result of that was, they spent 30 years with that. The result of that is so serious that by 2030, China will not have a youth population, which is very crucial for any nation. In India, right now, more than 50% of the youth between 20 and 30. So we will have the advantage because of this one-child policy of China. That's how we will overtake them, is what some thinkers are predicting. Now, therefore, the only result of this top-down forced population control was that maybe about 300 million people less on Earth. That's not much for the effort that has gone in. Now, the best that can be, anyway, 300 people less. It is hence clear that forced population control is barbaric, both in theory and practice. Since population growth cannot be curbed, the only option is to produce more. On the question of how the world will be able to sustain a growing population, first of all, we need a definition of poverty that can be applied across the world. The availability of goods and services determines quality of life. The availability varies depending on geographical location. Most poverty-stricken Americans, very poor Americans, will have a TV, home, electricity and indoor plumbing, running water, the poorest American. Now, most Africans do not have. If you transfer the goods and services enjoyed by the poorest American to Africa, the African would be a very rich man. So that's how it is. If you transfer goods enjoyed by those who live in California, California's version of poverty, to the average Somalian living on a paltry sum a day, that man would be suddenly fabulously rich. That makes any relative poverty measure useless to set global standards. So what do? We are not considering of providing everyone on this planet a life of luxury. No. It is about providing all with a life of possibility. So let us imagine a model pyramid. The bottom being belonging to food, water and shelter, and other basic survival concerns. The middle is devoted to catalysts for further growth like abundant energy, ample educational opportunities, access to communication and information. While the highest tier is reserved for freedom and health. The grand challenges are stacked up like dominoes. If we topple one domino by meeting one challenge, plenty of others will follow suit. Let me expand on this. Every person needs 3 to 5 liters of water, clean drinking water, and 2000 calories of or more of balanced nutritious food per day for optimal health. Currently, 1 billion people lack access to safe drinking water and 2.6 billion lack access to basic sanitation. As a result, half of the world's hospitalizations are due to people drinking water contaminated with infectious agents, toxic chemicals, and radiological hazards. Diarrhea accounts for the death of 1.8 million children a year. Right now, more people have access to a phone than a toilet. Consider what would happen if we solved this one problem of clean water. It would save lives, of course. It would also mean, say, countries of sub-Saharan Africa would no longer lose 5% of their gross domestic product on health spending. Productivity losses and labor diversions, all associated with dirty water, will go. Also, dehydration lowers one's ability to absorb nutrients, providing clean water will help those suffering from hunger and malnutrition. A bonus would be that an entire litany of diseases and disease vectors get wiped off the planet. Fewer trees will be chopped down to boil water. Fewer fossil fuels will be burned to purify water. So you see what I mean by one problem being taken care of, it takes care of a lot of others. It's a domino effect. There is a view that by solving problems like dirty water, the result will only serve to boost global population and worsen our situation. Yes, it is true that a population spike would result. Suddenly, if everybody was healthy, it would produce more children. But evolutionary reasons would indicate that such a spike will not last. In a recent talk, Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, has pointed out, the key thing you can do to reduce population growth is actually improve health